Good morning, all. I am Ranjita and I am going to present my topic stages of sampling. So, this class is prepared as part of ICT workshop, and I have been allotted the topic stages of sampling. So, we are going to dive into the process of sampling. So, please listen carefully. Okay. Stages of sampling plays a very significant role in the context of research. We are even using sampling in the real life situation, like suppose if we are baking a cake, we are taking a sample, that is we are taking a piece of cake to check whether the cake is properly baked or not. So we are making use of sampling there. And while blood testing, we are not giving them whole lot of blood, right? We are giving a sample of blood, and from the sample of blood they are conducting the blood test, and the result that we obtain, we apply it to the entire system. So that is how sampling works, and sampling is an essential part and parcel of our daily life situations, and in research it plays a pivotal role. It's a very crucial step, it's very important in the context of research. Sampling is a very crucial step. Okay. Now, sample design. Certain stages are involved in the selection of a sample. So, there is a way in which the sample is derived from the whole population. There are certain steps involved in the selection of a sample. It is also known as what? Sample design. So, in a sample design, as I have given, there is step 1, step 2, step 3, and so on. So, that is what called sample design. And selecting the appropriate sample design helps to ensure the authenticity of a research, helps to ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of a research. So, sample design is also a very crucial step. Now, characteristics of a good sample is given. First one is representativeness. So, we are selecting a sample from the given population. So, the sample is supposed to represent the whole target population, and the results that we obtain from the research should also be viable, should also be applied to the target population. So, the sample should truly represent what? Population. And the results that we have derived from the sample should also be applied or should be applicable to the target population. And then small sampling errors. Is it possible to minimize sampling error to zero? No, it's really difficult. Let's say it's impossible. But what we have to do it, we have to select the sampling design in such a way that it should have small sampling errors. It should minimize sampling errors. Then what? Control the systematic bias. The sample design should control the systematic bias. Okay. Now, generalizable. So, the findings that we derived from the sample should be generalizable. It should be applied or it should be applicable to the whole population. Okay. It should be viable within the budget constraints. We have to select a sample design which is financially, it should agree with the financial constraints. We have to select the sample or sample design in such a way that it should be viable with the financial constraints. We have to also think about the financial aspects of a research, and we have to select the sample in within these budget constraints. That is, it should be budget friendly. Okay. Now there is a diagram representing what is target population and accessible population. So accessible population is the part from which the sample is driven, and the target population and general population is also there. We can understand it with a very simple example. Just imagine there is a population called Indian adolescents. Indian adolescents, who will be the general population? All the boys and girls who are between the ages 10 to 19 years will be the part of this general population, because adolescence is operationally defined as all the elements in adolescence, or all the all the participants, or just say all the members of adolescence group will be the boys and girls who are between the ages 10 and 19. That is the operational definition of adolescence. So all the boys and girls whose age range is 10 to 19 years will be the general population. And target population will be what? Is it possible to study the whole group of Indian adolescents? No, it's impossible. So what we will do? We will try to, or we will attempt to study the adolescents in Kerala. So that is the target population. And we have to derive a sample. And in order to derive a sample, we are going to get a accessible population from the target population. So that is how it works. So the accessible population is the one from which we get the what? Sample. So population and sample. There is a specific target population, and from that target population we derive the accessible population, and from that accessible population we determine the sample. Now pictorial representation is given. There is sample which contains the actual units who are under the study, and then there is sampling frame which is part of the accessible target population, and that population contains what? Target population. We have already discussed that. Another example can be what? The teachers from Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti, or KV. Let's derive a set called KV teachers. Who will be the population? All the teachers who are part of KV system will be the population. And then we have to select an accessible population. What will be that? All the teachers of KV who are teaching or who are within Kerala state can be taken as what? Accessible population. Can we include the teachers from aided schools and aided colleges and government schools from Kerala state syllabus? No, they are not part of the KV system. So they are not the population. The population is purely the teachers from JNV, or if it's a KV teachers, if it's an investigation about KV teachers, the set will be, or the population will be what? The teachers from KV. Okay. Now, the first step is defining the target population, as I have already mentioned. Suppose if we are going to study American adolescents, an individual or an investigator from US is going to study the adolescents from US, the target population will be the set or the large population, all the adolescents in the state, US, United States. All the girls and boys between 10 to 19 years will be the part of that big population, the huge large population. Then the next step is to select the sampling frame. After the target population, selecting the appropriate target population, we have to determine the sampling frame. Sampling frame is, you have to list out all the sets in the target population. We have to set the sampling frame, and from this sampling frame we are going to determine sample in the next stages. So target population, selecting the target population is the first step, and the next step is selecting the appropriate specific sampling frame. Next one is determine if a probability or non-probability sampling method will be chosen. That is selecting the appropriate sampling technique. So what is non-probability sampling and probability sampling? Let's have a look at it. Probability sampling involves selecting a sample in which the elements are drawn by chance procedures. The main characteristics of probability sampling is that every member or element of the population has a non-probability of being chosen in the sample. This type of sampling is also known as what? Random sampling. That is probability sampling. Next one is what? Non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling, on the other hand, includes methods of selection in which elements are not chosen by chance procedures. The success of non-probability sampling depends on the knowledge, expertise, and judgment of the researchers. Non-probability sampling is used when the application of probability sampling is not feasible. Its advantages include convenience and economy. So we have discussed sampling techniques. So target population and then sampling frame, and then third step is sampling technique, that is probability sampling or non-probability sampling. So probability sampling and non-probability sampling also have some subset groups or subdivisions, subcategories. So we have to determine the particular sample design that is fitting or that has a that properly satisfies our research objectives. So the sample design is selected according to the requirements of the research design or according to the nature of the research and objectives of the research. What we have to do? We have to select the appropriate sampling design. So it's the choice of the researcher. Like he is not, or he or she shouldn't do it in a biased manner. But what we have to do is we have to keep in mind the objectives of the research and we have to select sampling design. The next step is to determine the sample size. So sample size is also an ambiguous term. Large sample size ensures accuracy actually, but while selecting a large sample size, there are lots of risks. Data collection will be very difficult. The financial constraints, we also have to think about the budget constraints. So selecting data from a larger sample is obviously risky. There are chances of errors, and then there are budget constraints. There is a problem of money. So it should be budget friendly. And it shouldn't be too small. So we have to make the correct choice according to our needs and objectives of the research also is important. The next step is to conduct the field work. So first step we have selected the target population, then we have determined the sampling frame. After determining the sampling frame, we have given the appropriate sampling technique, that is non-probability or probability sampling. As the fourth step, what we have done is we have determined the sample size, which is also a tricky step. The next step is to conduct the field work and what? Data collection. Data collection is really important, and there are so many techniques and methods like questionnaires, interview method, observation method, and so on. And data collection is also a tricky step and a tricky question, and we have to be very careful. We have to make sure that the data that we are collecting is authentic, and also data collection method should also be really bias free. Interviews and conducting questionnaires or structuring questionnaires, interviews, and doing the observation is also important. We have to make sure that we are collecting authentic data, and also we have to ensure that the data that we collected will remain, or the personal details of the respondents should be protected. The privacy should be protected. So the personal details of the respondents should be in safeguard. And it's also related to research ethics. We have to make sure that we are conducting the research ethically, especially the data collection. And obviously, sampling wouldn't end there because we have to assess the response rate, right? So, data collection is important, and response rate or getting the response rate is also important. Response rate is the number of cases agreeing to take part in the study. These cases are taken from the original sample. In reality, most researchers never achieve a 100% response rate. Is it possible to get 100% response rate? No, it's impossible, right? Reasons for this might include refusal to respond, ineligibility to respond, inability to respond, or the respondent has been located but the researchers are unable to make contact. In sum, response rate is important because each non-response is liable to bias in the final sample. So that's all about stages of sampling. We have discussed the major steps, starting from the target population and ending by data collection and getting the feedback, that is response rate. Each step is important, and we have to make sure that we are doing sampling in such a way that we can ensure like authenticity of the research to max. And we have to make sure that we are deleting or we are erasing sampling errors as far as possible, and we are getting rid of sample bias as well. And selection of sampling techniques is also important, and sample size is also a tricky one. So we have to do the research or we have to do the sampling in such a way that we are going to deal with this, or we are going to minimize these drawbacks or minimize these errors as far as possible. So thank you for listening to the video, and thank you for the cooperation, and we will be back with another video. Thank you so much.